Bonjour, good day. I'll have some opening comments and I look forward to your questions. Today, our opposition day motion vote will be held and parliamentarians will have a choice to make. We believe that our healthcare system should be public, should be universal, should be there for people when they need it. You shouldn't have to do a GoFundMe page to raise money for a surgery. You shouldn't have to pay out of pocket to get the care you need. Sadly, that is not where we're at today. Right now, many people are pulling out their credit cards instead of their health cards to get care. We've got examples of people spending $30,000 for a surgery by going to a neighboring province and people spending over $70 to see a family doctor. While the Conservatives are applauding this because this is right out of their playbook, they want to bring in more for-profit care, no matter how much that harms the system. What is concerning is the major flip-flop of Prime Minister Trudeau, who in the last campaign campaigned against for-profit care, saying it would be bad for Canadians, and we agreed. But now he's done a major flip-flop and said that, in fact, for-profit care is good and has applauded the moves of prime ministers or premiers that are bringing in for-profit care. So parliamentarians will have a choice today in Parliament. Will they choose to be on the side of a public universal health care or on the side of for-profit care? As Prime Minister, I made my position very clear. I will continue to fight for a universal healthcare system where we invest in our healthcare workers, we retain, respect, and hire and recruit more healthcare workers to deal with the problem. Or, and parliamentarians can choose that option, which is what Canadians want, a healthcare system that's there for them, or they can choose a for-profit option, which will cannibalize healthcare workers in the public sector. It will pull more workers from our already overburdened healthcare centers, our emergency rooms, our children's hospitals, and will only make the wait times longer and will make increased costs. People end up paying out of pocket. That's a choice in front of parliamentarians today during the opposition day motion vote. Donc, aujourd'hui, les députés ont un choix de quelle sorte de système de santé ils veulent voir. Notre position est claire. Notre vision pour notre système de santé est un système de santé qui est public et universel, qui est là pour vous quand vous en avez besoin. Malheureusement, ce n'est pas le cas maintenant. Maintenant, on a des gens qui sortent leur carte de crédit au lieu de leur carte d'assurance de maladie. Et c'est inquiétant. Les conservateurs applaudissent cette décision parce qu'ils veulent voir plus de privatisation à but lucratif dans notre système de santé. Mais je suis toujours surpris que le Premier ministre a fait une volte-face majeure en disant que la privatisation à but lucratif, c'est une bonne chose à faire. Quand dans le passé, elle était contre ça. Notre position est claire. On pense qu'on doit embaucher plus de travailleurs de santé, on doit investir dans notre système de santé, on doit aider les provinces davantage pour créer un système de santé qui est là pour votre famille. Et c'est un choix devant les députés aujourd'hui pour notre motion. Il peut appuyer notre vision, une vision de soins de santé publique, ou il peut appuyer une vision de santé à but lucratif où on paye plus et on reçoit moins de qualité et ça va empirer la crise dans notre système de santé. And finally, I just want to add, I want to make it very clear with the interference, the foreign interference, serious allegations, we put forward, New Democrats put forward a motion in committee, which was passed, and that motion is to have a public inquiry. We believe this should be nonpartisan, it should be transparent and public, and we continue to push for that. That is our position, and that's why we push for that vote in Parliament, and we'll continue to push for in committee, and we'll continue to push for a public inquiry that is nonpartisan and, of course, transparent. Je veux encore répéter que c'était nous, les néo-démocrates, qui avons proposé une motion dans le comité pour avoir une enquête publique. On pense qu'on doit avoir une enquête qui est indépendante, non partisan et transparent. Et c'est pourquoi on a proposé cette motion et on va continuer de mettre la pression pour réaliser cette enquête publique. Merci. With that, I'm ready for any questions you might have.
Justement, concernant l'enquête publique, est-ce que ça va être en quelque sorte... vous pourriez remettre votre entente avec les libéraux en jeu si Justin Trudeau décidait de ne pas aller de l'avant avec une enquête publique, parce qu'elle vous tient à cœur quand même, je comprends cette notion-là.
Ce n'est pas une décision qu'on va prendre aujourd'hui. Ce n'est pas une décision qu'on va prendre aujourd'hui. Mais c'est clair qu'on veut voir une enquête publique, parce qu'une enquête publique, C'est quelque chose indépendant, c'est non partisan. Et après ce qu'on a vu dans le comité, c'est clair qu'on a besoin de quelque chose de non partisan. C'est plutôt un cercle dans le comité et où les conservateurs et les libéraux veulent gagner des points politiques au lieu de vraiment trouver des solutions pour protéger notre démocratie.
Respond in English, would you withhold your, pull your support from the Liberals?
Yeah, as I've said before, that's not a decision I'm making today. What we do want is a public inquiry, because after seeing what we saw in committee, it is clear that the Liberals and Conservatives want to play a political game and score points because both parties are implicated in some of these serious allegations. And we think that it's not about scoring political points, it's about protecting our democracy. And that's why we put forward the motion for a public inquiry. We're happy to see we receive support on that. We now want to see the government move forward. We want to see Prime Minister Trudeau move forward on the public inquiry because that will provide independence, nonpartisan, and transparent way to deal with these very serious allegations.
Certains diront que dans une enquête publique, les gens, par exemple comme le directeur du SCRS ou encore la commissaire aux élections fédérales, ne pourra pas tellement dire plus. Ils vont encore nous servir les ententes de confidentialité, puis bon, les informations classées secrètes. Est-ce que c'est le bon outil malgré tout? Puis pourquoi c'est le bon outil malgré tout? Parce que ces informations-là, on ne lèvera pas le secret sur ces informations-là quand même.
On apprécie, on reconnaît on va avoir d'informations dans une enquête publique aussi qui va être potentiellement confidentielle. On accepte ça, on reconnaît ça, on comprend ça. Mais la différence, pourquoi on exige l'importance d'avoir une enquête publique, c'est vraiment pour avoir deux choses, non partisan et transparent. Donc, on va avoir quelques éléments qui, à cause de sécurité nationale, peut-être ne peut pas être public, mais en général, l'importance d'avoir une approche non partisane. Après ce qu'on a vu dans le comité, c'est clair que ce comité, ce n'est pas quelque chose qui travaille pour trouver des solutions, pour régler les choses. C'est vraiment un jeu politique pour gagner des points au lieu de trouver des solutions. Et pour moi, quelque chose assez important comme notre démocratie, ça mérite la prioritisation des solutions, de protéger notre démocratie, de garder l'importance d'avoir un système où tout le monde peut avoir confiance. Et ça, c'est pourquoi j'exige le gouvernement d'avoir une enquête publique et on met la pression particulièrement sur le Premier ministre Trudeau.
Can I just ask you more about that? While you're working, maybe convince the government to hold a, as you say, nonpartisan independent inquiry. There's still the work of the parliamentary committee, of course, PROC, and Conservatives on that committee have some very specific individuals they like to have testify, specifically Katie Telford and so on. And I think they're a little confused, the Conservatives are a little confused why they're not getting support from the Democrats on some of the relevant witnesses.
Well, we have supported having relevant witnesses testify, and we'll continue to do that. Let's be very clear, though, the Conservatives don't have the goal of getting to the truth. They really made it clear their goal is just to make this into a circus, to call everyone and anyone they can. And then when confronted with the option to expand it to include more witnesses that will actually get to the reality of political interference, particularly potentially Russia as well, we saw the Conservatives afraid of that because they're worried about expanding it to really get to the heart of the matter. And the difference between us and the Conservatives and the Liberals on this is we actually just want to see solutions. We want to see real transparency around what's going on. We want Canadians to know what's going on, and we want to provide a real path towards protecting our democracy instead of finding an attack point to target one prime minister. We want to target the entire electoral system to make sure it's being safeguarded, it's being protected, and we're not worried about gaining points on the Conservatives or the Liberals, both who've got some implication in this foreign interference. We actually just want to see an open, transparent, independent process that gives us the tools that we need to ensure that our democracy is protected.
Just one other thing about the Prime Minister, you may have heard last week, we've asked him about this inquiry. Among other things, he's noted that there's the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, right? Or there may be some other fora where parliamentarians are sworn to secrecy or something like that. About an hour ago, Mr. Poilievre said that that sort of fora would be, quote, a trap, a trick, if we had to swear MPs to get information and they couldn't talk about it. What do you think about the idea of, how public things should be, or should parliamentarians be sworn to secrecy, be allowed to review some of this CISA stuff?
Right. I don't want to say, I'm loath to say the words I agree with the individual you've mentioned, but I will say though, I don't think this should be in any way a private or a secret committee. This is something important that Canadians should have access to. Of course, there will be some information given that it's national security, given that there'll be CSIS information. Some of it may be required to be kept confidential, but the process should be public, and that's why I do not support a committee like the one you referred to, the NCCOP, as an option. It's not something that will provide the transparency. And really, I said two principles for me. It's the nonpartisan independence, and secondly, it's the transparency. Public should be involved in the sense that they should know what's going on. And that to me are those two are the prime principles why I would say public inquiry is the best way to go.
Chris Rosenberg, the author of the 2021 protocol report, told CTV News that perhaps we need to start looking at the CSIS Act and potentially modernizing it. Is that something the NDP would support or push for, to close those gaps?
Yeah, anytime there's ways for us to protect our national security and improve legislation around national security that doesn't undermine privacy or human rights or the Constitution, we should look at ways of modernizing and improving.
And just to go back about, I know David, my friend David here, tried to get opinion on this idea of withholding support from the Liberals or not. But this vote on that PROC report could happen in 2 days, as early as 2 days. When do you think you might make a decision about that? And who knows, maybe the Prime Minister wants to declare a confidence vote. So very shortly, it might be decision time for you. Would that be fair to say about whether or not Liberals deserve New Democrat support, generally speaking?
Well, if there is a non-confidence vote, we'll make a determination when that happens. That's not in front of us right now. What is in front of us is the fact that we want to see a public inquiry. We believe that's the right way to go. Given what we've seen, again, you can look at, if anyone's seen any of the clips of what's going on in committee, it is not a process that seems committed to finding solutions to improve our democracy. It seems more so the Conservatives want to score points on the Liberals, and Liberals want to do the same to the Conservatives. We, New Democrats, are not into that. We think that something as important as our democracy should be treated seriously and should be treated nonpartisan, and that's why an independent public inquiry is the way to go to assess what's going on, the exact extent of it, and then look for recommendations for us to improve our democracy and protect it.
On comprend que tout ce qui n'est pas une enquête publique indépendante ne satisferait pas les néo-démocrates.
Je pense que le travail du comité doit continuer et il peut continuer et on va appuyer les motions qui nous aident à avancer le travail du comité, mais je pense que c'est insuffisant le travail du comité parce que c'est trop partisan. Et une question de notre démocratie, une question d'ingérence étrangère, c'est assez important qu'une enquête publique, c'est vraiment la façon de prendre au sérieux les allégations et de trouver des solutions qui vont protéger notre système de démocratie.
Est-ce que c'est une enquête publique ou rien d'autre? Est-ce que c'est une enquête publique ou rien d'autre?
Les deux éléments que je veux voir, donc s'il y a une autre façon d'avoir ces deux éléments, donc indépendance, non partisan et puis transparence. S'il y a une autre façon d'obtenir ça, je suis ouvert à écouter les options. Je ne sais pas s'il y a une autre option, mais je suis ouvert si ça satisfait ces deux éléments, la question de transparence et la question de non partisan indépendance. Mais dans mon avis, c'est vraiment une enquête publique qui est la meilleure façon. Mais s'il y a une autre option qui satisfait ces deux éléments, je suis ouvert à analyser cette option.
You sort of answered this, Mr. Singh, but is there maybe a compromise short of an inquiry that you would accept? Like, there has been some suggestions that perhaps all of the political leaders could be brought in and given the same high-level, top-level briefing about what our national security agencies knew. You would have that information. Would that be something that would be a compromise you'd accept?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I said really there's two broad elements that I want to see happen. And the one is around nonpartisan independence. That's one. And the second is transparency so the public knows what's going on. If those two are satisfied in another forum, I'm open to that. We've said that the public inquiry is the best way to do it, but there might be another way. I don't know exactly what that is, but there might be another path that does satisfy those two. And I would look at that and make an assessment if it does achieve the independence and the nonpartisan, as well as having clear transparency for the public. That's something that we could look at as an option.
But how do you, I guess, manage the fact that you're dealing with very top secret information, where there's information that even at committee it seems that some of the spy agency folks weren't able to answer because it was a public forum. How do you manage that? How do you, like, at some point, don't you think you might have to make a compromise that because you're dealing with high-level, top-secret information that may be a public forum, I know you want transparency, I want that too as a journalist, but at some point, like, maybe that's something you might have to compromise on.
That happens all the time, though. I think it's a fair question. It happens all the time in inquiries where there are some elements of the inquiry where the information is confidential, and so then there's a portion that goes in camera or a portion that's put before, if there's a judge overseeing it, goes before the judge, and it doesn't get to the public. There are portions of inquiries where that happens, and that is a normal course of action given, we're a G7 nation, national security interests. We don't want, for example, countries to know about the details of how our spy agency is operating or the resources that we have. And so there's certain things that may be so important that we don't want the public, we don't want it in the public discourse because it could undermine the work of our agencies. That's understandable. And so having some mechanism where that is assessed in front of an independent person like a judge who can make that assessment, this would rise to the level of having some concerns. That's fair and that's understandable. But the general principle is, given the foreign interference and given the implications that a foreign government is trying to influence, in this case, we know so far, nomination meetings, that is very serious. And we want the public to know that we're taking steps to assess exactly what happened and how broad this is, and then take steps to recommend how can we prevent this from happening in the future. That's really the goal here. That should be the goal. And that's my goal. And that's why I'm pushing for a public inquiry, or in the alternative, if there are some ways to achieve the outcome of transparency, independence, and having nonpartisan forum, then we'll look at another option as well.
So should we move more quickly on developing a foreign interference registry then, given everything that you're saying?
It's something we should look at. That's probably why a public inquiry or having someone assess all the seriousness or all the evidence in front of us and then make recommendations around what we need to do to protect ourselves. Is it a registry? Are there other rules that should be put in place? What other protections can be put in place in terms of nomination meetings and nomination meeting processes? These are all the questions that are very legitimate questions that we need to have some evidence gathering and then some expert advice around how we fix them. And that's exactly why we think a public inquiry will help us get both of those things, assess the problem, and then provide us with concrete recommendations to fix and to provide support for future preventing this from happening.
Just on the private delivery of public health care, previously you said you're not ready to say whether or not this would be a reason to pull support. You ready to say that now?
Well, we are right now, in front of us is a vote, and the vote will really determine the way which way parliamentarians want to go. We've laid out our vision very clearly where we stand. We want public universal health care, and we don't want a cent of our public dollars. We understand Canadians are hardworking people, they're hard-earned money, the public money that we are entrusted with. Not a cent of that should go to a private equity firm that invests in for-profit care. Not a cent of that should go to a venture capitalist that's invested in for-profit care. We want to see every dollar of hard-earned taxpayer money go towards the care of our loved ones. And we saw the alternative in long-term care, that we've got these very wealthy corporations making huge profits off the pain of their residents, and we see some of the worst outcomes in those for-profit centers. So we've got shareholders making big profits, and we've got residents in those centers, in those facilities that are receiving some horrible treatment. So we don't want that to happen. We want public dollars going towards public care, going towards care that puts people first, and that remains our position. And we'll see today where the Parliament stands on that, and then we'll continue to push our vision, which is for the universal healthcare for every Canadian. No one should worry about how much money they have in their pocket and whether they can afford to get care or not. They can get the best care possible, and we want to see that that's the vision for Parliament. And so we'll put that to a question today. The vote will happen today. We'll see where people stand.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Merci. Thank you.
I can check online to see
Sure.
if there's a question.
Sure.
If you have a question and you're online, please use the raise hand function to notify us of your question. Si vous avez une question, vous êtes en ligne, puis utilisez la fonction lever la main pour nous aviser de votre question.
While we're waiting, do you want to maybe sit on the Agriculture Committee on Wednesday to have a question for Galen Weston?
Oh, I'll be there.
Okay.
Yes, tune in. I'll be there. Sure. Thanks so much. Appreciate it all. Thank you.
What you want to do on Wednesday?
Yeah, sure. I'll give you a little touch on that. We'll have a press conference on that closer to when it happens. But just for folks, we summon the executives of the large corporate grocery chains because we've been long saying that corporate greed is driving up the cost of living. And now we're seeing more and more economists that are supporting this vision. We even have the Bank of Canada that's admitting that profit-driven inflation is a legitimate concern, and that the increasing of interest rates has not impacted the price of groceries. And it shows that really this is not an interest rate susceptible issue. This is corporate greed that's driving up the cost of living. We've got economists in Europe that are also acknowledging that this is happening across the world, where the greed of corporations is they're using the cover of inflation to increase profits. We're seeing more and more or mounting support for this position. And so we're going to hear from the CEOs. We're going to call them to the committee. They're coming on Wednesday. And we'll ask them questions. Why is it that you are making massive profits while Canadians are struggling to buy their groceries? Why is it that week after week grocery prices continue to rise, their profits continue to rise, and Canadians are struggling? And we'll put those questions to the CEOs. And we've received lots of feedback from Canadians around the questions we should ask. And I'll be asking those questions in committee on Wednesday. Thanks. Appreciate it.